I know how that sounds, petty maybe. But when someone intentionally erases your existence in a professional setting, it chips away at your confidence. All we wanted was a coworker who could behave like a normal, functioning adult. Not someone who treated us like we were made of glass, or worse, like we were a threat. And none of us had any idea why. But we were about to find out. And nothing could have prepared us for the truth. The thing about working in an open office is, you notice things. You notice who always volunteers for projects, who steals snacks from the communal kitchen, and who conveniently forgets to CC women on group emails. But with Eli? You noticed what he didn't do. He never said good morning. Never looked any of us in the eye. Not once. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was dealing with anxiety. Maybe he was just introverted. No big deal. But then Amber, bold, firecracker Amber, cornered me near the printer. "Tell me I'm not imagining this," she said, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. He wasn't just shy, he was selectively social. He talked to the guys. Laughed at their dumb jokes. Participated in stand-ups with them. Shared tips on some AI plugin during lunch with Mark and Chris. But the moment a woman walked into the break room? Silence. No nod. No hello. Not even a glance. I tried once, twice, maybe a dozen times, to be polite, to break the ice. Asked how he was settling in, offered him a donut on Casual Friday. Nothing. Just a stiff nod, eyes on the floor. I even sent a friendly follow-up to a group project email and he didn't respond, until Brian asked him the same thing 5 minutes later. Then it was a full 3-paragraph response. We started talking about it among ourselves. At first just Amber and I, then Denise, then pretty much every woman on our floor. Was it just us? Were we imagining it? But no, we all saw it. He talks to the guys. Not the women. Ever. It started to make us feel like we weren't part of the same team. Like we were ghosts. You know how people say, don't take it personally? Well, when someone goes out of their way to avoid you every single day at work, avoids your eye contact, sidesteps you in the hallway, and never responds to your emails unless your male coworker forwards them on your behalf, it starts to feel pretty damn personal. I'm Jenna. I'm 29. And I work in the marketing department at a mid-sized tech company in Seattle. It's a good job, nothing flashy, but stable. The team is mostly chill, collaborative, and respectful. At least, it was. Until Eli joined. Eli's one of those genius-level coders. The kind who can fix a broken app in under an hour without breaking a sweat. He's young, maybe early 30s. Sharp, quiet, never messy. He wears the same style of navy or gray every day, doesn't talk much, keeps his head down. At first, I figured he was just awkward. Tech guys can be like that. No big deal. We've had quiet employees before. But then I started noticing something strange. Imagining what? He talks to Chris. To Brian. But to me? Nothing. Zilch. I asked him a direct question during stand-up and he just turned to Mark and answered him. I had to admit, I'd seen it too. By the end of the week, Denise, our data analyst and part-time office truth-teller, was on board. He's creating a hostile environment, Amber said during one of our whispered lunches. If a woman ignored every man in this office, she'd be labeled unstable or rude. Why does he get a pass? And honestly, she wasn't wrong. It wasn't just awkward anymore. It was systematic exclusion. Then someone, I don't even remember who, suggested we go to HR as a group. Strength in numbers, Amber said. We're not attacking him. We're just demanding equal treatment. We didn't want him fired or dragged through the mud. We just wanted to feel like we weren't being intentionally disregarded. Like we didn't have to shrink into the background every time he walked into a room, but deep down, something didn't sit right with me. I remembered seeing Eli in the hallway one afternoon when Denise and I were chatting near the water cooler. He approached, then paused. Turned. And took the long way around the cubicles just to avoid passing us. Another time, I was walking back from the restroom, and as I turned a corner, I accidentally brushed against him. Nothing inappropriate. Just shoulder to shoulder. He flinched like I'd electrocuted him. Then there was lunch. Or rather, no lunch. He never joined team outings. Never sat in the break room. Just disappeared to his car or vanished into one of the unused conference rooms. At first, I thought it was arrogance. But now I wasn't so sure. There was something behind those lowered eyes. Something more than discomfort. Fear, maybe. Or something like it. Still, none of us knew what to do with that feeling. We were women in tech, we'd been dismissed, sidelined, underestimated before. We knew what it looked like, but we were about to find out that sometimes, what looks like coldness, is something much deeper. It didn't start with torches and pitchforks. It started with an email. Amber drafted it. Denise and I read it over. A few other women quietly signed on. We tried to keep it professional, not accusatory. Ongoing pattern of exclusion, non-communicative with female staff, impacting team cohesion. You know, corporate speak for, this is getting weird, and we're tired of being ignored. We didn't expect fireworks. Just acknowledgement. Instead, we got Paul. Paul, our HR manager, was the kind of guy who said let's circle back and meant it in 6 months. He was always sweating, always smiling, always nervous. I think he thought that made him approachable. Mostly, it just made him ineffective. I mean, he said, after reading our complaint in the tiny HR meeting room, have any of you actually talked to Eli about this? We all stared at him. Talked to him? Amber repeated. That's the point, Paul, he won't talk to us. Paul shifted in his seat, clearly regretting his job. Let's not jump to conclusions. I'll schedule a conversation. Jenna, maybe you could sit in? A familiar face. Familiar, maybe. But not welcome, apparently. The next day, Paul called us into one of the glass conference rooms. Eli was already there, sitting stiffly in the corner, hands clasped so tight his knuckles were white. He didn't look up when I walked in. Thanks for joining, Eli, Paul began, his voice chipper. We've just had a few observations come up regarding team communication. Nothing disciplinary, of course. Just a chance to talk openly. Eli said nothing. Paul looked at me, prompting. I tried to keep my tone calm. Eli, we've noticed you don't interact much with the women on the team. It's starting to affect morale and collaboration. We're just trying to understand, is something going on? Eli stared at the floor. Seconds passed. Then more. Just when I was about to speak again, he finally said something. Quiet. Barely a whisper. I don't hate women. Paul and I both froze. I'm scared of you. The words sucked the air out of the room. He still wouldn't look at me. Or Paul. He just kept talking, voice shaking. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to exclude anyone. I can't. I don't know how to do this anymore. My stomach twisted. I glanced at Paul, who for once had no words. This wasn't about some arrogant guy with a superiority complex. This was someone broken. And we didn't even realize we'd been poking a wound that hadn't healed. After that meeting, I couldn't sleep. His words kept echoing in my head, I'm scared of you. Not I don't like you. Not I don't respect you. Scared and the worst part? I didn't know if I felt angry at him, or ashamed of myself. I didn't say anything to Amber or Denise the next day. I just went quiet, something I'm not exactly known for. Instead, I did what I always do when I can't make sense of something. I researched. I didn't expect to find much. Eli was a pretty private guy. No social media. No selfies. Nothing beyond a generic LinkedIn page. But after an hour of deep Googling, and a little help from an old contact in HR at his previous company, I found enough. There it was. His name. Tucked away in the third paragraph of an old tech blog post, buried under an anonymous write-up titled, "Culture of Silence, What Happened at Gridcore." Turns out, 2 years ago, Eli had been accused of harassment by a woman on his team. She'd pursued him romantically, and when he gently rejected her, she filed a formal complaint, complete with embellished stories and witnesses who later retracted their statements. The investigation dragged on for months. No evidence. No charges. But by the time it was over, the damage was done. He was let go quietly. Severance paid. Career in flames. But the part that made my stomach twist? He was engaged at the time. She left him within a week of the story breaking. His name never made it to the news, but in tech circles? Rumors move fast. That night, as I was leaving the office, I saw him outside in the lot, standing by his car. Alone. Just staring at nothing. I don't know what came over me, but I walked up, slow. He saw me, tensed, but didn't move. "I'm not here to interrogate you," I said. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for not asking before assuming." He hesitated, then let out a slow breath. "It's easier to be invisible than to be accused again." That line hit me like a punch to the chest. For the first time, I saw Eli not as a coworker or a problem, but as a man who'd been shattered by something none of us had bothered to ask about. And maybe I'd been part of shattering him all over again. I didn't think it would blow up the way it did. All I did was step back. I told Paul we didn't need to escalate things further with Eli. That I understood now, it wasn't hostility. It was fear. Trauma. Paul looked relieved, like a kid being let off the hook. But Amber? Denise? The rest of the women? They were furious. "She's just defending the quiet misogynist now," Amber said loud enough in the break room for everyone to hear. "She always was the cool girl," Denise added, barely looking at me. And just like that, I went from being a voice for the group, to a traitor. At first, I was defensive. Angry. But then something even uglier started to unfold, and it changed everything. It happened a week later. Amber had pitched a bold, expensive ad campaign. Big budget. Big vision. But Adam, one of the senior project leads, had concerns. Told her flat out it wasn't feasible. The next morning, she filed a harassment complaint against him. She said Adam spoke down to her, undermined her authority, and created a hostile environment. HR opened a case. People whispered. Adam was pulled from client meetings. He looked stunned, defeated. I watched the whole thing unfold with a knot in my stomach. Then, something happened I didn't expect. HR actually investigated. And guess what? The meeting had been recorded, with Amber's consent. And there it was, calm voices, no condescension, no raised tone. Just Adam outlining budget issues, offering compromises, and keeping his cool. Amber had twisted it. Exaggerated it. Weaponized her frustration. And this time? It backfired. Paul called her in. Word got around. HR didn't fire her, but they issued a formal warning, and she was pulled from 2 major projects. The same people who had rallied around her before? They started avoiding her now. Like she was radioactive. I sat in silence at my desk that day, staring at the group Slack channel. Watching her name fade from the chat, one day at a time. And all I could think was, maybe it wasn't about justice. Maybe we just needed a villain to feel powerful. We were so focused on being right, so focused on defending ourselves against the idea of male dominance, that we didn't stop to think that maybe not every man was the enemy. Some of them were just scared. Guarded. Human. And sometimes, we were the ones holding the match. I used to say I just wanted a normal coworker. Someone who could smile at the coffee machine, say good morning, and respond to my emails without a middleman. But now? Now I realize, he just wanted a safe place to work. Eli never apologized, and he didn't have to. Because once I knew the truth, I understood that his silence wasn't cruelty, it was protection. A barrier. A boundary. One that probably kept him sane in a world that had already decided he was guilty once before. A few days after Amber's fallout, I walked up to him again. Just outside the elevators. "I read about what happened at your last job," I said. "I know it's not my place, but I'm sorry for judging you before I ever knew you." He didn't say much. Just nodded. Still nervous. Still guarded. But I could see in his face, he heard me. We never became close. We didn't suddenly share memes or grab coffee together. But something shifted. A week later, he was asked to give a short tech talk during Friday demo day. Normally, he would have said no. But this time, he paused. Then said, "Only if Jenna stands up there with me." So I did. He didn't make eye contact with the crowd. His hands trembled a little as he clicked through the slides. But he made it through, clear, articulate, brilliant. When it ended, there was a pause. Then applause. A few people even cheered. And Eli? He let out the smallest breath. Like he'd just come up for air after being underwater for years. In that moment, I saw him. Not as a threat. Not as a ghost. But as a survivor. We live in a world where people demand quick answers. They want villains and heroes, loud apologies, public reckonings. But real life is messier than that. Sometimes, the people we think are ignoring us are just trying not to fall apart. Sometimes, the silence isn't disrespect. It's survival. And maybe real growth, the kind that matters, isn't about calling people out. It's about asking, quietly, why, before we burn it all down. I thought I was the brave one, filing complaints, taking stands, speaking truth to power. But maybe real bravery is learning when to listen instead of speak. Have you ever misjudged someone just because they didn't act the way you expected? Let me know in the comments. Your story might help someone else think twice, too.